Mr. Bongino, you occupy that seat as the FBI Deputy Director, yet your history demonstrates you have turned legal authority into a weapon against immigrants and Muslims. Ilhan Omar's voice resonated throughout the congressional hearing chamber, piercing and accusatory, carrying that recognizable tone she employs whenever the television cameras are recording. She stood positioned at her microphone, with her designer hijab arranged flawlessly and her facial expression displaying a sense of righteous indignation. This occasion was her defining moment, the specific hearing she had personally demanded, and the stage she intended to utilize to dismantle Dan Bongino on a national broadcast. Tonight, she proceeded, while warming up to her central theme, I intend to reveal your prejudice, your corruption, and your discriminatory agenda for the entire public to witness. The section of the gallery filled with progressives burst into loud cheering as they had arrived early and packed the room prepared to witness their squad leader defeat Trump's appointee to the FBI. C-SPAN cameras recorded every single instant, while CNN and MSNBC and Fox News were all present to document this hearing that everyone had been anticipating with bated breath. Congressional Oversight Committee on Immigration System Integrity was the formal designation, but every person present understood that this was actually a show trial featuring Ilhan Omar versus Dan Bongino. It was a battle between the rising star of the squad and the controversial FBI Deputy Director appointed by Trump, and she had dedicated weeks to preparing for this specific confrontation. Her staff members had gathered opposition research and rehearsed her attacks and coordinated with sympathetic media outlets, so she felt completely prepared for the encounter. Dan Bongino sat at the witness table, a 50-year-old former NYPD officer and former Secret Service agent who was a guy from Queens through and through. He was dressed in a dark suit with a white shirt and red tie, looking like a classic Fed, but his facial expression revealed something that Omar had not anticipated. He was not displaying nervousness or defensiveness, but was almost smiling with that slight lift at the corner of his mouth that a police officer gets when a suspect is about to say something incredibly foolish. The American public has a right to know, Omar continued, pressing, that you have utilized your office to target vulnerable populations and harass refugees and put into action Trump's racist immigration protocols. You assert that you care about law and order, yet your actual objective is discrimination against individuals who share my appearance. More cheering erupted, and camera flashes went off as she believed she was effectively destroying him, or at least that was her impression at the moment. Bongino leaned closer to his microphone, and when he began to speak, that Queen's accent was distinct, projecting working-class New York street cop energy, rather than the polished Washington rhetoric everyone expected. Congresswoman, he stated, with a voice that was calm but commanded authority. Before we discuss my history, let us discuss your history, including immigration fraud and marriage fraud and perjury and tax fraud and campaign finance violations. He paused to allow those words to register, because I have been a law enforcement officer for 20 years, including 4 years with the NYPD and 12 years with the Secret Service. I have investigated numerous fraud cases, and I have arrested criminals, and I certainly recognize fraud when I am looking right at it. Another pause followed, and the room had fallen completely silent, while Omar's smile had become frozen on her face. "And you, Congresswoman," Bongino said, leaning forward with his eyes locked onto hers, "are committing multiple federal offenses, and we are going to discuss every single one of them right here and right now on national television." He retrieved a thick folder that was organized with tabs and had documents clearly visible. "You stated you wanted to discuss the integrity of the immigration system, which is perfect. So let us begin with how you defrauded that very system by entering into a marriage with your own brother." The room erupted into chaos as Omar's facial expression transitioned from righteous confidence to frozen shock. in a mere fraction of a second. Her staff members were frantically glancing at one another while her attorneys leaned forward, because this was not in the script, and this was not how the events were supposed to unfold. "You desire to speak about immigration system integrity," Bongino repeated, settling back into his chair with his cop mode fully activated. "Good. Let us discuss your marriage to Ahmed Noor Saeed Elmi, a British citizen who, according to substantial evidence, happens to be your biological brother." He opened the folder and removed the first collection of documents. "Now I have worked on fraud cases and Secret Service financial crimes and identity theft and marriage fraud, so I have seen everything, and this particular case is a textbook example. Allow me to walk you through exactly how I know that you married your brother for the purpose of committing immigration fraud." Omar attempted to interrupt, claiming that these are disgusting racist conspiracy documents. "Facts are not racist," Congresswoman Bongino replied with a voice that was firm and not angry, but simply matter-of-fact in his police tone. "Evidence is not racist and facts are not racist, so let us examine the facts together." He held up the first document, showing that in 2009 you legally married Ahmed Noor Saeed Elmi, which is not in dispute because you admitted it. The marriage certificate was filed with Hennepin County, Minnesota in August 2009 when you were roughly 26 or 27 years old. He did not wait for an answer, stating that now is where the situation becomes interesting, so let us discuss who Ahmed Noor Saeed Elmi actually is. I obtained his educational records from the United Kingdom, where he attended high school before he came to the United States. Bongino held up documents that looked official, with British government seals showing UK school records with the father's name listed as Noor Saeed Elmi. That is the name of his father. Now let us examine your refugee application documents from 1995, when your family originally came to America. He held up another document and placed them side by side, showing the father's name, Noor Saeed Elmi, which is the same name. It is the exact same name with the exact same spelling, Noor Saeed Elmi. He looked at the committee and the cameras and at Omar, saying, "Now I am just a cop from Queens, and I do not possess fancy degrees in mathematics. But where I come from, when two people list the same man as their father, that makes them siblings. It makes them brother and sister." Someone in the gallery audibly gasped, while camera shutters clicked rapidly. "But that is merely one piece of evidence," Bongino continued with a steady voice, building his case piece by piece. "Let me provide you with more specifically regarding social media and Instagram." He pulled out printouts and held them up, showing Ahmed Elmi's Instagram account before you deleted everything and before you attempted to scrub the internet. But you know what they say, which is that the internet is forever and these are archived posts. He began reading a post from 2013 where Ahmed Elmi posted a photo with your daughter from your previous relationship with Ahmed Hirsi. In the caption, he calls her his niece, not his stepdaughter, but his niece. Bongino looked up, saying, "Now if he was simply your husband, she would be his stepdaughter, right? Because that is how marriage works." But he calls her his niece, which is an interesting word choice, because that is what she would be if he was your brother and not your husband. Omar was shaking her head, but she was not speaking, while her lawyers were whispering urgently. "But wait," Bongino said, warming up now, "because there is more. Let me tell you about an email retrieved through a Freedom of Information Act request sent from Ahmed Elmi to you in 2011. Do you want to know what it says?" he asked, pulling out the email and reading it slowly and clearly. "It says, 'Thanks for helping me get papers, sister, and I will make sure to pay you back when I get to London.'" Silence filled the room completely, dead silence. Sister Bongino repeated the word, letting it hang there, not wife, but sister. "He called you sister in an email about helping him get papers, which refers to immigration papers. That is what this was about, because you married your brother to help him get United States citizenship, or at minimum student visa status and in-state tuition benefits, and an easier path to permanent residence. He was not done yet, stating that is still not all the evidence. I have 6 affidavits which are sworn statements under penalty of perjury from members of the Minneapolis Somali community. These are people who knew your family and people who knew you in Somalia before you fled. Do you know what they all say? He asked, holding up the stack of documents. They all say Ahmed Noor Saeed Elmi is your brother. All 6 independently and under oath identify him as your sibling. One of them, Mrs. Fedumo Hassan, knew your family before the Civil War, and she is very specific and very detailed, saying Ahmed Elmi is your biological brother. There is no doubt and no confusion, Bongino said, as he organized his papers and looked directly at Omar. Now, let us talk about the timeline, because this is where the fraud becomes crystal clear. In 2002, you have an Islamic marriage ceremony with Ahmed Hirsi, which is not legal, just religious, and you have 2 children with him in 2006 and 2008. In 2008, you separate from Hirsi, which is a religious divorce not legal, since you were never legally married. Immediately in 2009, you legally marry Ahmed Elmi, the man with the same father as you, who is your brother. But here is the really interesting part, which is that from 2009 to 2011, you and Ahmed Hirsi and Ahmed Elmi all lived at the same address. All 3 of you were in a Columbia Heights, Minnesota apartment building in the same unit. He pulled out lease documents and utility bills and voter registration records showing all 3 names at the same address. You were living with your children's father and your legal husband, who just happens to be your brother, at the same time under the same roof. Someone in the audience said, "What, loud enough to be heard?" In 2009, immediately after marrying you, Ahmed Elmi enrolled at North Dakota State University, which is your alma mater. Do you know what marriage to a U.S. citizen gets you? It gets you in-state tuition significantly cheaper than out-of-state or international rates. It also makes you eligible for U.S. student aid programs and also gives you legal status to stay in the country. Bongino leaned forward, stating he graduated in 2012, then moved to Minneapolis, then got evicted from public housing, then went back to the UK where he is right now. Mission accomplished. He got his degree, got his benefits, and the game was over. He pulled out one final document saying, "And here is the smoking gun, which is your divorce filing from 2017. You signed it under penalty of perjury, which means lying on it is a felony. In that filing, you claimed, and I quote, I have had no contact with Ahmed Noor Saeed Elmi since June 2011. He set that document down and pulled out photos from London in 2015, 4 years after you claimed you had no contact. These are archived Instagram photos of you and Ahmed Elmi together in London, clearly you and clearly him and clearly together." He looked at Omar, saying, "That is perjury, Congresswoman. You lied under oath in a court document, which is a felony separate from the marriage fraud and separate from the immigration fraud, as it is its own federal crime." Omar found her voice sounding shaky and defensive, claiming this is all taken out of context, and these are debunked conspiracy theories from racist bloggers. Debunked. Bongino's voice went sharp. "Congresswoman, nothing I just presented has been debunked. UK government documents showing the father's name are not debunked, and your refugee application showing the same father's name is not debunked. The email calling you sister is not debunked, and 6 sworn affidavits are not debunked, and photos contradicting your sworn statement are not debunked." He paused and said, "You know what would debunk all of this, which is one simple thing, a DNA test." The room tensed as he said, If Ahmed Elmi is not your brother, a DNA test proves it simple and easy. 1 hour to swab your cheek and swab his cheek, and lab results come back not related, and the story is over. You are vindicated, and everyone who accused you looks like a fool. He spread his hands, saying, "The Daily Mail requested you take a DNA test in 2019 and you refused. Multiple other outlets requested it, and you refused, and members of Congress requested it, and you refused. Why?" he asked, leaning back. "I will tell you why. Because you know what that test would show. You know Ahmed Elmi is your brother. And you cannot risk that test because it would prove beyond any doubt that you committed federal immigration fraud." Omar was shaking her head with tears forming, saying, "I will not dignify these racist attacks." Racist Bongino's voice went cold with a street cop edge coming through. "Let me tell you something, Congresswoman. I worked the 75th Precinct in East New York, Brooklyn. You know what that is, one of the most dangerous neighborhoods in New York City. I dealt with every ethnicity, every religion, and every background, and I arrested people of every color and every creed. You know what I cared about? I cared about evidence and crime and fraud." He pointed at his documents, stating, "This is not about your race, and this is not about your religion, and this is not about you being an immigrant. This is about federal crimes, multiple federal crimes. Immigration fraud is a federal crime carrying up to 5 years in prison, up to $250,000 in fines, and for immigrants who commit immigration fraud, deportation." He let that sink in, saying, "You came to this country as a refugee, and this country saved your life and saved your family and gave you opportunities. It gave you citizenship and eventually a seat in Congress, and you repaid it by defrauding the immigration system by gaming it, and by marrying your brother to help him get benefits he was not entitled to." His voice rose slightly, saying, "You know what that does? It makes every legitimate refugee suspect. It makes people doubt the system, and it makes Americans who are already skeptical about immigration say, 'See, they commit fraud.' You hurt every honest refugee and every honest immigrant because you could not follow the rules." He closed that section of his folder, stating, "Marriage fraud, immigration fraud, and perjury constitutes 3 federal felonies right there. And we are just getting started, as we have not even talked about your taxes yet." Omar sat frozen while her attorneys were writing frantically and her staffers were on their phones. The progressive section of the gallery had gone completely silent, with no more applause and no more chanting, just shock. Bongino pulled out a new section from his folder, saying, "Let us talk about your tax returns, Congresswoman. You know what I learned working financial fraud cases in the Secret Service. Bongino began organizing his next batch of documents. Follow the money, always follow the money, because money does not lie. People lie. But bank records and tax returns and financial documents tell the truth." He held up a new set of papers for 2014 and 2015, which were your federal tax returns filed jointly. Do you know what married filing jointly means? Congresswoman, it means you are filing taxes as a married couple with your spouse, who is your legal husband or wife. He set down the returns with Omar's signature, visible even from a distance, saying in 2014 you filed joint tax returns with Ahmed Hirsi, the father of your children. You filed with the man you had a religious ceremony with back in 2002, and in 2015 you did the same thing, filing joint returns with Ahmed Hirsi. Bongino looked up at her, stating problem. Big problem. You were legally married to Ahmed Elmi, not Ahmed Hirsi, because Elmi is your brother, and the marriage was still valid. You did not legally divorce him until 2017, so he pulled out the marriage certificate and the divorce filing date and put them side by side. So in 2014 and 2015, you filed joint tax returns with a man you were not legally married to while being legally married to a different man entirely. That is tax fraud. Congresswoman, he said, reading from a legal document, Title 26 United States Code Section 7206, making false statements on tax returns, specifically subsection 1. Any person who willfully makes and subscribes any return statement or other document which contains or is verified by a written declaration that it is made under the penalties of perjury and which he does not believe to be true and correct, as to every material matter shall be guilty of a felony. He set it down, noting the penalty is up to 3 years in prison, up to $100,000 in fines, plus the taxes owed, plus penalties, plus interest. Omar tried to respond saying, I corrected those filings. When did you correct them when you got caught? Bongino finished for her. You corrected them after the Minnesota Campaign Finance and Public Disclosure Board started investigating you, and after journalists started asking questions and after the story became public, not before. He leaned forward, stating correcting fraud. After you are caught does not make it not fraud. It just makes it admitted fraud. You signed those tax returns under penalty of perjury. Look at your signature right there. You certified that everything on those returns was true and correct, he said, pointing at the documents. But it was not true, because you claimed to be married to Ahmed Hirsi when you were not, as you were married to Ahmed Elmi. That is material information, and that is not a small mistake or a technicality, that is fraud. But maybe, Bongino continued with his voice taking on a sarcastic edge, maybe you just forgot you were married to your brother. Maybe it slipped your mind. So let us talk about something where you definitely did not forget. Let us talk about perjury. He pulled out a court document with the official seal visible dated August 2nd, 2017 divorce filing, Hennepin County District Court. You were petitioning to divorce Ahmed Nur Saeed Elmi, your brother. Your husband. Wait, which is it? He flipped through the pages, stating in this filing you make several statements under oath, under penalty of perjury. Do you know what perjury is, Congresswoman? It is lying under oath, and it is a felony, federal crime, and state crime. He found the relevant section on page 3, Application for Service, by alternate means, where you claim you cannot find Ahmed Elmi to serve him divorce papers. You state, and again, this is under penalty of perjury. I have had no contact with Ahmed Nur Saeed Elmi since June 2011. He set the document down carefully, repeating June 2011. That is what you swore under oath in a legal filing with your signature right there, right above the line that says, I declare under penalty of perjury that everything I have stated in this document is true and correct. He paused to let the tension build, stating, now I have been a cop for 20 years, and I have testified in court more times than I can count. I know what perjury means. It means if you lie on that document, you go to prison. That is why people take it seriously, and that is why you think twice before you sign it. He pulled out a manila envelope and opened it slowly and dramatically, revealing June 2015, London, England. Instagram posts archived, screenshots, timestamps, GGO tagged, the whole 9 yards. He laid out the photos, showing you and Ahmed Elmi together in London, clear photos of your face and his face together. This was 4 years after you claimed you had no contact with him. He pointed at the images, saying, that is you, right, designer, hijab, distinctive features, that is you, and that is Ahmed Elmi. It is the same person from all the other photos we have, and same person from the marriage certificate photo. It is him. Bongino looked at Omar, whose face had gone pale, saying, so let me get this straight. In June 2011, you supposedly stopped all contact with your brother-husband, but in 2015, you are photographed with him in London. Then in 2017, you file legal documents claiming you bad not seen him since 2011. He tapped the documents stating that is perjury, clear, simple, undeniable perjury. You lied under oath in a court filing about material facts, and that is a felony, state felony, and probably federal too, depending on circumstances. Omar's voice came out desperate, saying, "The photos do not prove anything. Do not prove what Bongino interrupted. Do not prove you were together because they do. Do not prove you had contact because they do. And do not prove you lied in your divorce filing because they do." He organized his papers saying, "Let me tell you something I learned in investigations, which is when somebody lies about one thing, you start doubting everything they say. When somebody commits one crime, you start looking for others. And Congresswoman, you have got a pattern here." He counted on his fingers. Marriage fraud check, immigration fraud check, tax fraud check, perjury check. Perjury. That is 4 federal felonies, 4 separate crimes, all documented, all provable. His voice went quieter and more intense, saying, "I protected presidents for 12 years, George W. Bush and Barack Obama. 2 presidents I did not vote for. But I protected them because that was my job and I followed the rules. Every background check, every security clearance, every protocol by the book." He pointed at her, stating, "You are in Congress, you make laws, you are supposed to follow them, but you don't. You commit crimes and then call anyone who investigates you a racist. Well, I have got news for you. I am a cop, and I investigate crimes because that is what cops do. And when the evidence is this strong, we make arrests." He leaned back, saying, "Now I cannot arrest you as I am not that kind of law enforcement anymore. But the evidence is public. It is documented, it is on the record, and everyone watching this knows exactly what you did." Omar was crying now, with mascara running and her voice breaking, saying, "This is a witch hunt, and you are persecuting me, because you broke the law." Bongino finished, not yelling, not angry, just stating facts. Multiple laws, multiple times, multiple felonies. He pulled out his next section, stating and speaking of breaking the law. "Let us talk about your campaign finances. Let us talk about Tim Minette, and let us talk about how you used campaign funds to pay for your affair." Bongino pulled out a thick stack of documents, including Federal Election Commission filings, campaign finance reports, and financial records. This section was heavy with evidence regarding Tim Minette, a political consultant who was a married man and ran a firm called E Street Group. Know how I know all this because it is public record, and FEC filings are public, so everyone can see them. He spread out the filings showing 2018, where your campaign starts paying E Street Group for consulting services, digital consulting, and travel expenses. Know how much he asked, pulling out a calculator, an actual physical calculator, and holding it up. Let us add it up, 2018 approximately $190,000, and 2019 approximately $180,000. Total through 2019 is $370,000 to one consulting firm, Tim Minette's firm. He set the calculator down, saying, "Now, I am not saying consulting is inherently wrong, as campaigns hire consultants, and that is normal. But here is what is not normal: having an affair with your consultant while paying him massive amounts of campaign money." Omar tried to interrupt, saying, "My personal relationships, stop." But Bongino said sharply, "Stop right there. This is not personal when campaign funds are involved, and when donor money is involved, and when federal election law is involved, then it is very much public business." He pulled out a court document from Beth Minette, who is Tim Minette's wife, she filed for divorce in April 2019. Know what she said in her divorce filing? Let me read directly from the court documents. He found the relevant section reading, "My husband Tim Minot told me in April 2019 that he was having an affair with Ilhan Omar. He informed me that he was in love with the congresswoman and that he wanted to dissolve our marriage." Bongino looked up, stating that is under oath in a legal filing. Beth Minot swearing that her husband confessed to having an affair with you. This occurred while you were both married to other people, while his firm was receiving hundreds of thousands of dollars from your campaign. He pulled out more documents saying, "But it gets better." Beth Minot gave a deposition sworn testimony, and in that deposition, she describes conversations with her husband about the affair. She says something very interesting. He said, finding the quote, she testified that Tim told her, "Do not worry about money. Ilhan's campaign is covering everything." The room went completely silent, and that statement hung in the air like a bomb. Ilhan's campaign is covering everything. Bongino repeated, slowly emphasizing campaign funds, donor money, money from working people who believed in you, who donated to elect you, and who thought their money would go toward campaign activities. He pulled out specific FEC filings, saying, "Let us look at some of these expenses." March 2019, travel expenses for E Street Group, $15,000 for a trip to California campaign event, maybe a romantic getaway. He flipped pages to April 2019, same month. Beth Minot says the affair was admitted, more travel expenses, more consulting fees. May 2019, June 2019, July 2019, every single month, huge payments. He pulled out credit card records, campaign, credit card statements showing dinners, hotels, flights all charged to the campaign. All while you were having an affair, and all while both of you were married to other people. Bongino's voice went harder, saying, "You know what is particularly disgusting about this? Beth Minot was not just your consultant's wife. She worked in politics, too. She had a career, she had a life. You destroyed her marriage, you broke up a family, and you used campaign funds to do it." Omar was shaking her head, tears streaming, saying, "This is unfair. This is unfair." Bongino's Queen's accent got thicker, street cop coming out saying, "You want to talk about unfair? Let me tell you what is unfair. Working people donating $20, $50, $100 because they believe in you. They think you are fighting for them, and you take that money and use it to fund your affair." He slammed the documents down, not violent, just emphatic, stating, "That is unfair, that is theft. That is fraud. That is a violation of federal campaign finance law." He pulled out another section saying, "But wait, there is more." March 2020. You married Tim Minot. The affair is public. Now everyone knows. Beth Minot's divorce is finalized. You divorce Ahmed Hirsi. You marry Tim. He pulled out post 2020. FEC filings. Asking, think the payments stopped. Think you stopped funneling money to your now husband. No, they increased. He started reading amounts, 2020. $1.1 million more than triple the previous years combined. 2021, another million plus you are now paying your husband's consulting firm massive amounts of campaign money. Bongino looked at the committee at the cameras, stating, "Think about this. You marry the guy he is now your husband, and you continue paying his company. Your campaign donors are now funding your household, your family income. That is a textbook conflict of interest. That is potentially illegal coordination between candidate and consultant. That is laundering campaign funds into personal income." He pulled out FEC regulations and read them aloud. Federal election law prohibits using campaign funds for personal use. Personal use includes payments to family members beyond fair market value, and it includes payments that primarily benefit the candidate personally rather than the campaign. He set the regulations down, asking, "You are paying your husband over $1 million a year for consulting. Does that seem like fair market value, or does that seem like you are using campaign money to support your household?" Omar tried again, saying, "The FEC reviewed, the FEC is investigating," but Bongino corrected, "Multiple ethics complaints have been filed. The investigation is ongoing, and everyone watching this can see what you did." His voice went quiet, intense, saying, "I have seen corruption in my 20 years. I have seen politicians take bribes. I have seen lobbyists buy access. I have seen all kinds of financial crimes, but this is cruder than most of it." He gestured at the pile of documents, saying, "You had an affair, used campaign money to fund it, destroyed a marriage, then married the guy, and kept funneling donor money to him. That is not consulting. That is not legitimate business. That is personal enrichment. That is fraud." He leaned forward one final time, stating, "And the worst part, you did all this while claiming to fight for working people, while claiming to represent the struggling, the poor, the vulnerable. They donated to you, and you used their money to fund your affair and then support your wealthy husband." He closed that section of his folder summarizing marriage fraud, tax fraud, perjury, campaign finance fraud. How many felonies is that? I have lost count. But we are not done, because there is something even more fundamental we need to discuss. He pulled out his next section, saying, "Let us talk about what you did to the refugee system that saved your life." Bongino's tone shifted, becoming less cop and more personal, because this was emotional for him. "You came to this country as a refugee." He began with his voice softer now in 1995 when you were 12 or 13 years old. Your family fled Somalia, civil war. Terrible situation, you spent 4 years in a refugee camp in Kenya. Dadaab refugee camp. I have seen photos, and I have read about it. Horrific conditions. He pulled out documents stating, then, America accepted you, your family, refugee status. You came to Minnesota, got settled, got help, got opportunities, learned English, went to school. North Dakota State University, got your degree. He looked at Omar. In 2000, at age 17 or 18, you became a United States citizen, naturalized, full citizen, all rights, all privileges. This country welcomed you, protected you, gave you everything. He paused, saying, and 19 years later, you are in Congress, refugee to Congresswoman. That is the American dream, right? That is proof the system works. Proof that America welcomes people who need help. Proof that opportunity exists here. His voice hardened, stating, but you did not just benefit from the system. You exploited it. You defrauded it. You betrayed it. He pulled out the marriage fraud evidence again, stating, you married your brother to gain immigration, to get him benefits, to help him circumvent the system. The same system that saved your life, you turned around and defrauded it. Bongino stood up, walked a few steps in street cop lecture mode, saying, you know what that does. You know what happens when a refugee commits immigration fraud? It makes every refugee suspect. Every legitimate asylum seeker gets questioned harder, gets investigated more thoroughly, gets their claims doubted. He pointed at her, saying, you proved the skeptics right. Everyone who says refugees commit fraud, you proved them right. Everyone who says we need stricter vetting, you proved them right. Everyone who says immigrants game the system, you proved them right. His voice rose, stating, I have been protecting people for 20 years, NYPD Secret Service, FBI. I have worked with immigrants from every country, Every background, most of them honest, law-abiding, hard-working. They follow the rules. They are grateful for the opportunity they contribute. He gestured broadly, and then there is you. You come here as a refugee, get every advantage, every opportunity, and you commit federal crimes multiple times. And you hide behind identity politics when anyone questions you. Omar tried to speak, saying, "You do not understand what it is like." "Don't understand." Bongino's voice went sharp. "Don't understand what don't understand being an immigrant. My grandparents were immigrants. Italian came through Ellis Island, worked their whole lives, followed every rule, never asked for handouts. Built a life." He pointed at himself. "I grew up in Queens, working-class neighborhood. My father was a city worker, my mother a secretary. Nobody handed me anything. I worked for everything. Became a cop. Dangerous streets, East New York. Brooklyn, the 75th Precinct. You know what that neighborhood was like in the 90s. War zone." His voice was passionate now, real, stating, "I worked my way up NYPD to Secret Service protected presidents. Earned my way, and I followed every single rule, every background check, every security clearance, every protocol. Because that is what you do in this country. You follow the rules." He turned back to Omar, stating, "You did not follow the rules. You broke them repeatedly, deliberately. And you claim anyone who calls you out is attacking you because of your identity." He walked back to the table, sat down, looked directly at her, saying, "This is not about you being Muslim. This is not about you being black. This is not about you being an immigrant. This is not about you being a woman." He tapped the documents, stating, "This is about federal crimes, about fraud, about lying, about corruption, about betraying the system that saved your life." His voice went quieter, more intense, stating, "You lecture Americans about compassion, about welcoming refugees, about opening doors. And I actually agree with some of that. I think we should help people fleeing war, fleeing persecution, fleeing violence." He leaned forward, stating, "But we cannot help people if we cannot trust the system. And we cannot trust the system when people like you commit fraud, when you game it, when you exploit it for personal benefit." He pulled out one final document, saying, "You want to know what would clear all this up? What would prove your innocence? What would shut down every accusation?" He held it up, stating, "DNA test, simple, easy, quick, proves. Ahmed Elmi is not your brother. Vindicates you completely. Makes me look like an idiot. Makes everyone who accused you look like conspiracy theorists." He set it down, stating, "But you will not take it. Multiple outlets requested it. You refused multiple times." "Why?" he asked, staring at her. "Because you know what it would show. You know he is your brother. You know the test would prove you committed immigration fraud. And you cannot risk that." Omar was crying openly now, voice breaking. "I do not have to prove anything to you. You do not have to prove anything to me," Bongino agreed, "but you should want to prove it to America. You should want to clear your name, unless you can, not unless the accusations are true." He organized his papers, saying refugee to Congresswoman could have been an inspiration, could have shown that the system works, that America welcomes those in need, that opportunity exists. He looked at her with something like disappointment, stating instead, "You proved that some people will exploit any system, will break any rule, will commit any fraud, and will call anyone who questions them a bigot." He pulled out his next section, saying, "But let us get back to specifics because I want to try something. I want to ask you some very simple questions, and I want you to answer them yes or no." "Can you do that, Congresswoman?" Bongino settled back in his chair in interrogation mode, which was what he trained for: decades of questioning suspects. Decades of spotting lies. This was his element. In investigations, he began voice conversational innocent people answer questions. They are eager to clear their names. They cooperate. They provide evidence. They want the truth to come out. He paused, stating guilty people. They deflect. They attack the questioner. They claim persecution. They refuse to answer. They hide behind technicalities. He looked at Omar, saying, every single question. I have asked you today. You have deflected. You have attacked me. You have claimed this is racist, Islamophobic, a witch hunt. But you have not answered the questions. He pulled out a legal pad, fresh page pen ready, saying, so let us try this simple questions, yes or no answers. That is it. Just answer the questions. He clicked his pen. Question 1 is Ahmed Noor Saeed Elmi. Your brother, yes or no? Omar looked at her lawyers. They whispered. She turned back, stating these allegations are baseless conspiracy theories that have been, yes or no? Bongino interrupted. Simple question, is he your brother? I have already addressed this in previous statements, she replied. That is not a yes or no. Is Ahmed Noor Saeed Elmi your brother? Omar's jaw clenched, saying, I refuse to dignify. Refusal to answer. Bongino said, writing it down, got it noted, moving on. He looked up, asking question 2. Did you file joint tax returns with Ahmed Hirsi in 2014 and 2015 while legally married to Ahmed Elmi? Omar consulted with her lawyers again, stating, I corrected those filings through the proper. That is a yes, Bongino said, writing you did file joint returns with someone you were not married to while married to someone else, correct? The filings were amended, yes or no? Did you file those returns as I described? Silence followed as Omar looked trapped. Silence noted. Bongino said, I will take that as a yes, since you did not deny it. Next question. He looked up. Question 3. In your 2017 divorce filing, did you state under penalty of perjury that you had no contact with Ahmed Elmi since June 2011? Omar's voice came out defensive, saying legal documents have specific. Yes or no, did you make that statement in that filing? Yes, but... Yes, thank you. First straight answer. Bongino wrote it down. Question 4. Were you photographed with Ahmed Elmi in London in 2015? Omar shook her head, stating those photos do not prove. Were you photographed with him in 2015, 4 years after you claimed you had no contact? Her lawyers whispered urgently. She did not answer. Refusal to answer. Bongino noted interesting. He continued. Question 5. Did your campaign pay Tim Manette's company approximately $370,000 between 2018 and 2019? Campaign expenditures are all properly disclosed. That is a yes. $370,000. Correct, the FEC filings show. Yes, got it. He wrote it down. Question 6. Were you having an affair with Tim Manette during this time period? Omar's face went red, saying, my personal life. Beth Manette testified under oath that you were in her divorce filing. Is her testimony false? I am not going to discuss my personal. Refusal to answer, Bongino said, but we have testimony under oath from his ex-wife, so I will note that as confirmed by third-party witness. He looked up again, asking question 7 after you married Tim Manette. In 2000, did your campaign continue paying his company? And did those payments increase to over $1 million? Consulting fees are determined by yes or no, did payments increase after marriage? The services provided were yes or no. Silence. I will check the FEC filings myself. Bongino said they are public. And yes, they increased substantially. He set his pen down, looked at the legal pad, looked at the committee, looked at Omar. 7 questions, 7 deflections. Not one straight answer, not one honest response. He stood up, saying, "You know what? I learned interrogating suspects for 20 years. This right here," he pointed at her, "this is what guilt looks like. This is how criminals respond when cornered with evidence." He walked a few steps, saying, "Innocent people say no, that is not true. And here is proof. They provide evidence, they welcome investigation, they clear their name." He turned back, stating, "You attack me, you claim racism, you refuse to answer, you hide behind your identity, you use your religion as a shield. You claim victimhood." His voice went hard, but the evidence does not care about your feelings. Documents do not care about your identity. Facts do not care about political correctness. He pointed at his folder, stating, "I have got UK government documents, US government documents, court filings, tax returns, FEC filings, sworn testimony, photos, emails, witnesses." He spread his hands. "What do you have? Accusations of racism, claims of conspiracy theories, refusal to answer questions, refusal to take a DNA test." He walked back to his seat, stating, "In my 20 years in law enforcement, I have never seen an innocent person refuse a DNA test that would prove their innocence. Never, not once, innocent people take that test immediately." He sat down, looked directly at her, saying, "You will not take it because you cannot. Because it would prove you married your brother, and that would end your career, end your freedom, possibly end your citizenship." Omar was sobbing now, makeup ruined voice barely working, saying, "This is harassment. This is persecution. I do not have to sit here. And you do not have to sit here." Bongino agreed. "You can leave. Walk out, storm, off-claim victimhood. That is what guilty people do." He organized his papers, stating, "But everyone watching this knows the truth. You committed federal crimes, multiple felonies, and you are hiding behind identity politics because you cannot defend yourself with facts." He pulled out his final section, saying, "But let me address one more thing because people watching are probably wondering. If you are so guilty, if the evidence is so strong, why have you not been charged? Why have you not been arrested? Why are you not in prison?" He held up the papers, saying, "Let me explain why you are probably going to get away with it." Bongino's tone changed again, bitter, frustrated. This was personal. "You are sitting there wondering if I am so guilty. Why am I not in handcuffs?" Good question. Let me answer it. He pulled out a timeline. 2016 conservative media starts investigating your marriages. Questions arise. Evidence accumulates. U.S. Attorney for Minnesota. Obama appointee Andy Lugar, he issues a letter saying they are not investigating. Convenient. He moved down the timeline, 2017. Trump takes office, new administration, new prosecutors should investigate, right? Should look at all this evidence. They do not. Why? Because you are a rising progressive star. You are a squad member. You check every diversity box. Prosecuting you would be political suicide. He tapped the timeline, 2018. You are elected to Congress. Now you are protected by even more political considerations. Now, you are a member of Congress. Going after you looks like political persecution, even though the evidence is overwhelming. He pulled out statutes, but here is the real problem. Statute of limitations. Marriage fraud from 2009. We are at 15, 16 years now. Some statutes of limitations are 15 years. Might be too late. Tax fraud from 2014 to 2015. 6 years typically could be expired. He read from legal documents, federal marriage fraud statute up to 5 years prison, but must be prosecuted within a certain time frame. Immigration fraud. Similar issues, perjury from 2017, that is more recent, still potentially prosecutable. He set the papers down, saying, "But here is the political reality. You are a minority woman, Muslim immigrant, progressive, Democrat, squad member. Going after you would be called racist, Islamophobic, sexist, political persecution." His voice went hard with frustration, stating prosecutors are scared. They do not want the media backlash. They do not want to be accused of targeting you because of your identity. So they do nothing. They let it slide. They hope it goes away. He looked at the committee at the cameras, stating, "That is the system. We have different rules for different people. If you are politically protected, if you check the right boxes, if you have the right support, you can commit federal crimes and face no consequences." He pointed at her, saying, "You should be in prison or at minimum facing serious charges. Marriage fraud, immigration fraud, tax fraud, perjury, campaign, finance violations, that is multiple felonies." He pulled out recent news articles saying, "But you know what? It might not be over." Tom Homan, Border Czar, Trump administration. He is pulling your files, looking at what can still be prosecuted. FBI under new leadership. He smiled slightly. "My leadership, we are reviewing everything." He read from a recent statement, Tom Homan quote, "We are looking at the evidence, some statute of limitations issues, but we are examining what legal options remain." That is not over, Congresswoman. That investigation is active. He pulled out more documents saying, "And there is another possibility people do not talk about. If you committed immigration fraud, if you married your brother to get him citizenship or benefits that could affect your citizenship." He read from immigration law, citizenship, obtained through fraud or misrepresentation can be revoked, denaturalization. It is rare, but it happens if it is proven. You committed immigration fraud even years ago, even decades ago, they can revoke your citizenship. He looked up, saying, "And once citizenship is revoked, deportation becomes possible back to Somalia, back to where you came from. That is the law." Omar's eyes went wide, fear visible now. "Don't like that?" Bongino asked. "Don't want to face those consequences? Then you should have followed the rules, should have been grateful for the opportunity you were given instead of defrauding the system." He organized his papers one final time, saying, "But realistically, you are probably going to get away with it. Political protection media, shield identity, politics, armor prosecutors too scared to act. Statute of limitations expired on some crimes." He looked directly at her, saying, "But make no mistake, everyone knows what you did. The evidence is public. It is documented. It is irrefutable. And history will record it." He stood up, saying, "I spent 20 years in law enforcement, NYPD Secret Service, FBI. I followed the rules played by the book. I have seen criminals get away with crimes because they had the right connections, the right political protection, the right identity." He pointed at her. "You are one of them. You committed federal crimes multiple times, and you are hiding behind identity politics, calling anyone who investigates you a racist, playing the victim while you are actually the criminal." His voice rose with passion, saying, "But I will tell you something. The American people are not stupid. They see through it. They know what you did. They know you married your brother. They know you committed tax fraud. They know you lied under oath. They know you funneled campaign money to your affair partner, then husband." He gestured broadly. They know you came here as a refugee and repaid America by defrauding the immigration system. They know you are corrupt. They know you are a criminal. And one day, when you are gone from Congress, when your political career is over, all anyone will remember is that Ilhan Omar committed federal crimes and got away with it because the system was too broken to prosecute her. He sat back down, calm now, the anger burned out, saying, "That is the truth. That is the reality. You win, for now. You get away with it for now. But everyone knows, and history will judge you." He closed his folder, saying, "Final, I am done. Madam Chairwoman, I have presented the evidence. The American people can judge for themselves." The hearing room erupted the moment Bongino finished, media scrambling, staffers on phones, committee members arguing security, trying to maintain order. Omar did not say another word. Her lawyers flanked her. They rushed her out of the room through a side door. Away from cameras, away from reporters. But you cannot escape the internet. Within minutes, clips were everywhere. Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, every platform, hashtag Ilhan Omar, exposed, trending worldwide in under an hour, hashtag brother marriage, hashtag tax fraud, hashtag campaign finance, fraud, all trending, all viral. C-SPAN ratings shattered records. The hearing footage replayed continuously on every news channel. Conservative media went 24/7 coverage. Mainstream media could not ignore it anymore. Even progressive outlets struggled to defend her. "It is concerning," said one MSNBC host, clearly uncomfortable. "These allegations deserve serious investigation." CNN tried harder to defend her. Bongino's attacks were aggressive and potentially inappropriate, but even they had to acknowledge the documents, the evidence, the refusal to answer questions. Fox News ran victory laps. Bongino destroys Omar with facts, squad member exposed for multiple felonies. The coverage was relentless. By the next morning, Democrats were in full panic mode. Nancy Pelosi issued a careful statement. "We take these allegations seriously and support thorough investigation through appropriate channels, which translated means we are distancing ourselves." Chuck Schumer said nothing. Absolutely nothing. His office declined. Comment squad members tried to support her. AOC tweeted, "This is a coordinated attack on a woman of color in Congress. We stand with Ilhan." But even that got ratioed thousands of comments. "What about the evidence? Is evidence racist address?" "The facts, not identity." Rashida Tlaib defended her. Ayanna Pressley defended her. But their voices were drowned out by the sheer volume of evidence, now public documents everywhere, people sharing photos, timelines, analyses. Within 3 days, a petition appeared. Ahmed Hassan started it, a refugee advocate in Minneapolis who came to America legally from Somalia. He waited years in the system, followed every rule. He watched. The hearing saw the evidence, and he was furious. "I came here legally," he told reporters outside his community center. "I waited. I followed the rules. I was vetted, background checks, interviews, years of waiting. And she commits fraud. She makes it harder for every legitimate refugee." His petition, "Investigate Ilhan Omar for immigration fraud," had text that was simple. "We, the undersigned, demand that the FBI, DOJ, and relevant authorities fully investigate Representative Ilhan Omar for immigration fraud, tax fraud, perjury, and campaign finance violations." The evidence presented in the congressional hearing demands action. No one is above the law. First day, 50,000 signatures. Week 1, 200,000. Week 2, 500,000. Ahmed did interviews everywhere. CNN, Fox, MSNBC. His story was powerful. Legal refugee followed the rules, advocating for accountability. She betrayed the system that saved her life, he said on Anderson Cooper. She betrayed every honest refugee because now people will look at us with more suspicion because she proved the skeptics right. Cooper tried to push back, but the allegations are not proven. The evidence is overwhelming, Ahmed interrupted. Same father name, Instagram posts, email, 6 witnesses' photos contradicting her sworn statement, refusal to take DNA test. That is not innocent behavior. Even Cooper had to acknowledge that. Sarah Mitchell came forward. Next friend of Beth? Minot watched her friend's marriage destroyed. Beth is a good person, Sarah told Fox News. She did not deserve what happened, and to know campaign funds paid for the affair, donor money from working people, that is theft. She started her own petition hold, Ilhan Omar, accountable for campaign finance violations that got another 100,000 signatures quickly. Conservative Legal Foundation filed formal complaints to the FBI, to DOJ, to the House Ethics Committee, to the Minnesota Attorney General, demanding investigation, demanding prosecution. The complaints were detailed, professional citing specific laws, specific evidence, specific violations, hard to ignore. Tom Homan gave an interview we are reviewing. Everything he said on Fox News. Immigration fraud is serious. If she married her brother to game the system, that is a federal crime. Statute of limitations might be an issue on some charges, but we are examining what can still be prosecuted. Reporter asked, could she be deported? Homan did not smile. If citizenship was obtained through fraud, it can be revoked. That is, the law, denaturalization is possible. And after that, yes, deportation is possible. We are looking at all options. That clip went mega viral, millions of views. The idea that Omar could be deported, that galvanized conservatives, enraged progressives. But the law was clear. Fraud invalidates citizenship. FBI under Bongino's leadership announced a review of the case. New evidence has come to light. We are examining what was not investigated previously. This is not political. This is about federal crimes. Even Democrats who defended Omar went quiet. Too many felonies, too much evidence, too politically toxic. Her fundraising collapsed. Donors pulled out major progressive PACs, redirected money. Tech billionaires who had supported her stopped responding to calls. She had become poison primary challenger, announced a moderate Democrat, a Republican, even another progressive who promised integrity and accountability. I support progressive policies, the progressive challenger said, but we need representatives who follow the law, who do not commit federal crimes, who do not embarrass our movement. Polls showed her favorability dropping in her own district among her own constituents. 6 months later, Omar held a press conference. She looked exhausted, makeup perfect, but face drawn, she had aged visibly. After much consideration and consultation with my family, she read from a prepared statement, I have decided not to seek re-election. I want to spend more time with my family and explore new opportunities outside of Congress, which translated means she was done, politically finished, career over. The media tried to spin it as her choice, stepping down to focus on family, but everyone knew the truth. She had been destroyed, exposed, forced out. Ahmed Hassan issued a statement. Good, but it is not enough. She should face charges. She should be investigated. She should be held accountable. Justice requires it. Sarah Mitchell agreed she is escaping responsibility, walking away, getting to keep her freedom while the evidence of her crimes is public. That is not justice. That is the system failing. Conservative media declared victory. Bongino destroyed Omar's career, squad member forced out after fraud exposure. The coverage was triumphant. But Tom Homan was not done. Investigation continues, he said in a statement. Just because she is leaving Congress does not mean the law does not apply. We are still examining potential charges. That investigation continues today, files being reviewed, evidence being analyzed, prosecutors considering options. Will she be charged? Unknown political considerations, statute of limitations, challenges, proving some allegations beyond reasonable doubt. But everyone knows what she did. Everyone knows she married her brother. Everyone knows she committed tax fraud. Everyone knows she lied under oath. Everyone knows she funneled campaign money to her affair partner. Everyone knows she came here as a refugee and repaid America by defrauding the immigration system. The evidence is public. The documents are real. The witnesses testified. The facts are facts, and history will record it all. Ilhan Omar came to America as a refugee, rose to Congress, and fell because she committed federal crimes and thought she could hide behind identity politics. She was wrong. Dan Bongino, street cop from Queens, protected presidents, made it to FI deputy director and used his platform to expose corruption with evidence, with facts, with the truth. That is the story. That is what happened when Ilhan Omar tried to destroy Dan Bongino. She destroyed herself instead. Stories like this matter because politicians like Ilhan Omar count on you not knowing the facts. They count on identity politics protecting them. They count on calling investigators racist instead of answering questions. They count on the media ignoring evidence. They count on prosecutors being too scared to act. But the evidence is out there. The documents are real. The facts do not lie. If this opened your eyes to who Ilhan Omar really is, share this story. Let people know the truth. Let them see the evidence. Let them understand what she did. Drop a comment saying, should she be prosecuted or should she be deported? And what do you think justice looks like here? Subscribe for more truth, more facts, more accountability. Because politicians like Omar need to be exposed. The corrupt need to be called out. The criminals need to face consequences. This is just one story. But there are plenty more politicians committing crimes, plenty more corruption to expose, plenty more truth to tell. See you in the next one.